Hello guys and gals, welcome back to another episode of Haunted Gaming. As we come back from the world of troll pastas, we come to a double dragon creepypasta called Max and Jimmy. So, like always, sit back and enjoy Max and Jimmy, the double dragon creepypasta. It was a Friday night, and my parents had finally decided that I was allowed to be at home without a babysitter. After all, I was 13. Mom kissed me on the forehead and handed me some money to order a pizza while Dad lectured me for the 100th time on the speed dial saved in the phone for emergencies. They were headed out to their book club, like every Friday, but I knew they were going out to drink. No one leaves a club about books in that kind of a mood. My older brother Derek was at a summer camp for the week, and I couldn't wait until I was old enough to go as well. He always told me great stories about hiking late at night, telling scary stories, and sneaking off with the girls to the lake, but that was still 2 years away. Anyways, my parents left and I picked up the phone and ordered a pizza. A large, deep dish with everything but mushrooms. Ugh. He told me it would be there in about half an hour, so I hung up and switched on the television. Late-night TV was always so boring. Long talk shows, fat cops making jokes, and confusing shows about doctors. And after 5 minutes of surfing channels, I decided to switch on the NES. Double Dragon 2 was in the system, and it was one of mine and Derek's favorite games. I plugged in my NES Advantage controller and got ready for some arcade action. But after switching to Channel 3 on the television, the video was all mixed up. Random squares and pixels popped around the screen, and the title no longer said Double Dragon. It was more like Double Dagoo? I let out a sigh as I switched off the Nintendo and pulled out the cartridge. I gave it a good blow, and then opened the door of the Nintendo like I was peering into a mail slot. I inhaled, and just as I was about to blow into the system, a fat spider came crawling out of it. Ooh! I smashed the spider on top of the television with my palm. There was yellow goo covering the TV in my hand. Ugh, Mom's gonna love cleaning this up, I thought to myself. Wiping my hand on my jeans, I double-checked inside the Nintendo. It was creepy crawly free, so I blew inside the system and popped the game back in. I switched on the device, but only got this black screen. I smashed the reset button a couple times and finally got it to work. Double Dragon 2, The Revenge. The title screen came up. No funny picture or garbled sound. I put my fist and said aloud, "Yes!" I pressed start, selected player 1, and was ready to kick some ass. I've never been able to beat this game by myself. Derek was a lot better than me and knew all the secrets, but I watched what he would do, and I think I learned enough to do it on my own. And besides, I had a good feeling about tonight. No parents, pizza, and a fun game to play. I started playing and I was off to a good start. I cleared the first 3 screens without taking one hit, and was even on my way to beating Derek's high score. I moved from the couch and was sitting on the floor, leaning in towards the television, completely focused on the game when knock, knock, knock. The knocking had been so loud that I just jumped off the floor and dropped the joystick, as I remembered that I had a pizza I had ordered. I picked up the joystick and paused the game. I'd taken 2 hits because of the pizza guy, but, so there's no way, he's getting a tip now. I yelled, "Hold on," to the closed door as I went to the kitchen to get the money my mother had left me. As I put my hand on the door handle, I hesitated. Dad always told me not to open the door for strangers. I'd ordered the pizza, but what if this guy was a delivery man? I couldn't remember how long it had been since I ordered, and I wasn't tall enough to look through the glass at the top of the door. Instead of opening the door, I asked, "Who is it?" I didn't get an answer. I then asked, "Who is it?" in a louder voice this time. No answer, but he had to have heard me. So I was about to repeat myself for the 3rd time. The stranger knocked again 3 times. I was startled by this and almost slipped back from the door. The only thing keeping me in place was my firm grip on the handle, which was beginning to feel slippery as my hand was sweating. Whoever this was, pizza man, stranger, or something else, they couldn't hear me. Or they could, but they weren't answering. So against Dad's lecturing, I began to turn the handle, and the door moved open. A spear of soft yellow light widened across the floor from the outside porch light. I opened the door a few inches and slowly peered around it to the figure on my porch. Backlit in yellow light, his face covered in shadow, he loomed over me, slowly turned his head, bringing his gaze to mine. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, and I saw the shadowy person before me was in fact the pizza man. He wore headphones that were so loud I could almost make out the song from where I was standing. "Hey, little dude, where's your mom at?" he asked me, pushing his long hair from in front of his face. "Gone," I said, and handed him the money for the pizza. He pulled a box from the bag he was carrying and handed it to me. Before giving him time to count the money and notice that there was no tip, I said thanks and turned away from him, closing the door with my foot. I brought the pizza box to the kitchen and opened it up. Immediately I could tell something was wrong with it, but I couldn't figure it out. I grabbed a plate from the sink and turned back to the pizza. That's when I noticed it. I slowly approached the box and looked at the pizza. My stomach had begun to turn as I looked, and it's because I noticed it had mushrooms. Gross. Oh well. I mean, it still did look delicious, so I piled 3 slices onto my plate and carried it to the living room, where my game was still paused. I began eating the first slice and looked up to the screen. I can't believe the stupid pizza man made me take 2 hits. I've been doing so good. But I still might be able to beat my brother's score. So after finishing the slice, I grabbed my joystick and unpaused the game. There was one enemy on screen, so I went to give him the old flying knee and finish off this level. When I noticed it wasn't an enemy, though. It was Jimmy. He's a character you play with as a second fighter. I figured the game had glitched, but I wasn't about to reset it now. I took so long just to get it to work. And I was doing better than I ever have. I tried moving to the right and left, but Jimmy wouldn't move. The character just sat there. I tried punching and kicking him, but nothing had happened. I was determined not to reset the Nintendo, and instead I plugged in the second controller. I pressed buttons on the Player 2 gamepad, but Jimmy still wouldn't move, punch, or anything. I grabbed my advantage and tried to move on to the right of the stage. "Come on," I yelled. Completely frustrated with the game bugging out when I was doing so well and the Jimmy character began walking to the right of the screen, I stared at the screen, baffled, mouth agape. Did Jimmy just listen to me? As Jimmy reached the edge of the screen I was on, the game continued. We were in the next area and enemies began closing in on us. I jumped into action, fighting off enemies on the right side of the screen. When I finished off the last one, I looked over and was astonished to see that Jimmy was fighting off enemies to the left. He was doing much better than me, jumping over their heads and landing flying knees and throws like it was nothing. I cheered him on, and when the last enemy on the screen was cleared, we both had moved to the right. I wasn't sure if the game had glitched and taken over the second player or what, but I wasn't going to argue. We were doing great. The character of Jimmy was so good I was able to set my controller down to eat, and he would still fight off everyone that came after me. So, we fought off countless waves, and eventually came to the helicopter level. I hated this level because the door would open, and if you weren't careful, it'd suck you right out and you'd lose a life. But I had the secret. Derek would always use the secret on this level and never would tell me how. But if you pause the game for exactly 10 seconds, then unpaused it, the door would close. And you didn't have to worry about being sucked out. Time to show this Jimmy character who the master really is. The helicopter door opened and the characters began sliding towards it, ready to be sucked out into the clouds. As I was about to press start to perform the glitch, the game had paused. I looked down at my joystick and saw my finger still hovering over the pause button. I hadn't pressed it yet, but the game was paused. I tried pressing it and the game remained paused. As I was about to press the start button on the other controller, the game unpaused. The helicopter door had closed, and we were no longer in danger of flying out. Maybe the computer controlling Jimmy knew about the trick too. Derek had always told me that he and his friends were the ones that figured it out, and he couldn't tell me because nobody knew about it. So I was staring at the screen, confused, while Jimmy fought off the enemies still aboard the helicopter with us. I shook off my confusion and jumped back into the fight. Me and my mystery partner were kicking butt and taking names, clearing level after level, and before long we were at the final stage. This was it. My brother and I were able to finish the final boss, and he used to swear at the TV and say the game cheated. We always got so close, but we could never do it, and I was feeling confident this time and rushed right in. We were doing it. Me and Jimmy weren't getting touched, and dealing loads of damage to the final boss, and with one final kick we finished off the boss. I leapt to my feet and shouted, "Fuck yeah!" Good thing my parents weren't home. The credits began to roll and I stuffed my mouth with pizza, so excited to tell everyone that I had beaten the game, especially Derek. Man, was he going to be mad when I was able to beat it without him. I probably won't tell him about the Jimmy glitch, because then he'll say it doesn't count. He's going to be so jealous. The credits ended and I was brought back to the title screen of the game. I switched off the Nintendo, flipped the TV back over to the cable box, and it was still the same dumb doctor show, and a lady was crying on screen. I brought my plate onto the kitchen and set it back into the sink. Just then the front door had opened. It was only 9 o'clock, way too early to be my parents. I walked back to the living room and looked towards the door. It was my parents, home early I guess. And they didn't seem to be in as good a mood as they usually are after a book club. I ran to my mother smiling and hugged her. "You'll never believe what happened, Mom," I explained. That's when I noticed she wasn't just in a bad mood. She was crying. I looked at my dad, but he was staring straight ahead with a somber look on his face. My mother knelt down beside me and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I love you, son," she said through her tears, and I stared back at her with a puzzled look. Then she stood up and walked to the kitchen. I mean, yeah, I beat Double Dragon, but it was no reason to cry. I turned my head to watch her walk past me and into the kitchen, while my father knelt by my side like Mom had done. I turned to look at him, and this time he was looking me in the eye. He opened his mouth to speak, hesitated, then closed his mouth, and he opened it again, and spoke in a low voice, barely over a whisper. "Max, there's been an accident," he said. I seemed to be looking around me for the worst he wanted to say. "The camp Derek is at called, and He stopped, like he didn't know the rest of the story. He closed his mouth, pulling his lips tight over his teeth. I felt another hand on my back. It was Mom, who was back at my side. Derek passed away today, Dad had said, this time looking at my mom. Mom began to cry, shaking. I felt her grip tighten on the back of my shirt. How could Derek die? He was just a kid like me. Kids can't die. My father looked back at me and asked very simply, "Do you understand, son?" All I did was stare back at the NES. Well, that was quite the feels past to the end. I honestly saw the ending coming a mile away, though, but it was still kind of welcome after all this. It was far better than I was expecting with, the pizza man being some killer with no rhyme or reason, as I thought for a second reading this, when we got to the middle, with this, lack of response during the knocking or, asking questions. But as sad as it was at the end, and, I even expected it, it was better and much more hard-hitting. The game itself, Double Dragon, which if you don't know what it is, it's a side-scroller beat-em-up game that you should play. It has a co-op functionality, like the game did depict, but, nothing was too offbeat in the game inside the Creepypasta, aside from this weird co-op glitch, which wasn't really I guess glitch, it was more of a possession, to be honest, and this Creepypasta really doesn't revolve on too many obscure game anomalies, but rather a, blend between the reality and the game itself. Like we've seen in some other Creepypastas. I mean, really the only other off anomaly in this game was like Double Dagoo, which, the fuck is that? You tell me. Then we go to playing this game, and we do a really good job playing it, with this kind of unnecessary pizza side story, I guess you could say. And then we have this, we have more awesome gaming. We finish the game, get this super awesome score, and then we get this sad news that's delivered to us, and that really does hit the feels, because we did have a good time building up, and that is the key word, build up, because like I said many times in the past, in order to have a good creepypasta or any kind of, tale, you gotta have really good build up, because that helps you invest into the game, and in a way, we do know it's his brother with that constant mentioning, and that's why you sort of know what's gonna happen in the end, but when that revelation does come, it has some really good effect. And at the end, it does hit you more in the feels than it does, give you that creepy vibe. And after looking at it, but like always, I do ask this question: what would you rate it, and what would you change to make it better? This has been another episode of Haunted Gaming, and if you like what you saw, then like, comment, and subscribe. This is me, Mudahar, and I am out.